So let's go there. Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, you get a call, and these folks want to buy their first Ocean City condo, right? They want to buy a beach place. What does that process usually look like when they work with you? Like from beginning initial conversation to kind of throughout the process and then the close. Like,
Yeah. So initially, I luckily, have the opportunity to live here in town. So typically, if I have someone reach out to me, my first opportunity is to try to just sit down with them. Ideally, if they would like to come into the office, just sit down and me talk about their goals.
mhm,
Wanting, just wanting to purchase a property isn't always enough to do it. You need to. I've learned you need to be educated in order to be confident enough to make the right decision on the right unit. So first off, I'm just more than happy always to take some time with someone, let them come into the office, chat through the market and what opportunities we have. And then from there, yeah, getting into these places, there's so many nuances to these buildings. There are yeah, just every association seems to be run a tiny little bit different. There's pockets in Ocean City that are way different than the pocket right next to it.
mhm.
So definitely helping people get eyes on things. You can always look online; everything looks beautiful in a photo, but to feel, smell, and see a place with your own eyes. And then however long it takes, there's times where it can be 3 or 4 properties and, the client, is able to make an informed decision and move forward. And then there's other times where it's just not going to happen. And so, yeah, just staying connected with people, staying willing, to lend a ear, I feel like, is what I always try to do.
Right.
Um, but yeah, definitely. Once you go under contract, hopefully there shouldn't be many things to come out of the woodwork from there. Luckily, there's once you have enough, I guess, experience going through home inspections, once you have seen enough reserve studies, once you've gone through, yeah, the trials enough, you can help to troubleshoot, plan for the unexpected
Mhm.
while not obsessing over the unexpected.
Right.
hmm
Right. As they're under contract, you mentioned House Bill 107. What do our people need to know about that? What is that? Maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so in essence, yeah, Maryland passed this legislation back in 23 that attempts to have all these, specifically the condominiums, you'll see it referenced to most, but HOAs, any really common element association. It basically makes them or requires them to have a reserve study done, updated, and on file every 3 to 5 years. I've noticed there's a couple maybe different iterations and levels to that reserve study, but in essence, they all operate the same. You get someone to, an engineer or an equivalent to come out, forecast expenses 30 to 40 years into the future, basically just making sure there's no deferred maintenance on these units, making sure there's no safety issues, and ultimately helps to protect the public. Helps to keep property values up, helps keep buildings insurable,
hmm
things of that nature. So definitely a valuable asset, and definitely important to check off during the process.
Right. So that's something that your buyers or a buyer gets an opportunity to review while they're under contract.
Yeah, absolutely. In a perfect situation, you're able to do a vast majority of that due diligence up front, to whereas you don't need to rely on, a contractual, protection to, save you in that event.
Right.
Luckily, a lot of these buildings, I feel like probably upwards of 90% are absolutely compliant nowadays. Um, but every once in a while, you'll still come across a unit or a building that isn't quite up to par administratively, I guess you could call it. So yeah, you definitely have that protection, but again, it's how much can you figure out up front? Because sometimes you can use that, in negotiations,
Yeah.
and sometimes you might know things that maybe not everyone knows. So definitely staying up to date with these buildings is definitely huge.
Yeah. And in I think of a couple things, with you, Dallas, is growing up here, you had a chance to go past all these buildings, right? Like you were in town running around. You saw, like, from a perspective of seeing them every day. But then where you're at today, we talked about like where you started and where you've gotten to. I will say that out of everybody on the team, you study the market, you study the process probably more than anybody. Right. And now I see that coming out. I see that coming out in our team meetings. Like when questions come up, you're able to answer those. I see it with your clients. Like
Mhm.
your clients are in really good hands because you have taken it upon yourself to gain so much knowledge of the process in general, but then being boots on the ground and focusing here in Ocean City. You know the buildings that ahead of time might have an issue, right? You've studied it. You can, so when a client comes to you, they can feel they can rest assured that you're going to be able to guide them most of the time, 99% of the time, of if there's an issue with one of these buildings.
Absolutely. Yeah, and, I don't know how how common it is, for other agents, but I definitely see myself as, people come to me exactly, they choose me. There's at least, I think it's 1,500 of us agents just in the Coastal Association. So there's lots of choices. There's lots of
Right.
choices for realtors, lenders, everything in the world. So I try not to take it for granted. And I see that if I can invest in myself, that I can be, an asset to these, to these people. So yeah, I like getting into the nitty gritty, knowing the contracts, knowing the language, and everything in between, knowing just enough about the auxiliary services,
Right.
knowing enough about the lending, knowing enough about, what a home inspector might look for, what a title company or an attorney might flag. Um, just yeah, not pointing out red flags, but being able to, future pace the clients, just basically to put them in the best position possible.
Right. Right. Yeah.